Beverly Hills logo on them. If you're wondering how Beverly Hills got its name and who Beverly was, actually Beverly was not, as far as I know, a person. Beverly Hills is named after a place in Massachusetts called Beverly Farms. In the early part of the last century, a developer from Beverly Farms came out here to build some houses, and he brought the name Beverly with him. In 1912, the Beverly Hills Hotel opened, and because it was in the community of Beverly, at the bottom of the hill, they called it the Beverly Hills Hotel. 2 years later, when the city was incorporated, they stole the name of the hotel. So the city technically is named after the hotel. It's not the other way around. Here's the Beverly Hills Hotel on the left. This is the view of the hotel that was immortalized on the Hotel California album by the band The Eagles. That album cover was a photo of this hotel with the camera looking across those towers on the roof as the sun is setting. That story, of course, is only for those of us in the bus that remember what albums were. The Polo Lounge is the restaurant at the hotel. That's where stars have been buying overpriced drinks for generations now. Sometimes people are a little bit intimidated about entering these wealthy hotels, but you really don't have to be. You don't have to be staying there to go have a drink at the Polo Lounge, and it's kind of fun to do that because you can wander the hallways and see what famous people are there tonight at the same time. Speaking of which, Donald Trump owns this house on the right. He doesn't live here. I think he lives in government housing in the East Coast somewhere. Place on the left, this public restroom, is where George Michael had his coming out party. I wasn't sure how to phrase that, as you can tell. I think I did okay. This is the famous six-way intersection of Beverly Hills. That's right, a six-way stop sign. Anywhere else in the world, they put in a street light or a roundabout. But here they just let the cars collide with each other all day long. Look at the chaos going on. And it goes on 24 hours a day. Look at the skid marks in the street from all the accidents. Look at Danny breaking into a sweat trying to get us through alive. Good work, Danny. Okay, here we are on Beverly Drive, which is probably the most famous street you've never heard of. But you've all seen this street because every movie ever made about Beverly Hills shows you this street. Anytime you watch a movie or a music video or a TV show episode or a commercial set in Beverly Hills, they shoot on the street because they realize that audiences recognize this street. Why do we recognize it? Not from driving down this street for most of us. It actually comes from watching movies about Beverly Hills that were filmed on this street. So when we see the street in a movie, we immediately know where the movie plays. It's like a visual shortcut. Al Pacino lives behind these hedges and walls on the road somewhere back there. Sometimes we see him in the front yard. I see him in his chair up. He goes to sit in the chair and knock on his sofa. Maybe it's the only place in his house he has reception. I don't know. Have you noticed yet that the fire hydrants at Beverly Hills are platinum? There's one on the left. I'm sure the dogs at Beverly Hills really do appreciate that. Melting in the sun. It's a house with no right angles, basically. People always look at that house or into architecture and they say, oh, that's a Gaudi house. It's not, actually. Gaudi was a famous Spanish architect, and he did design this house, but it's kind of a knockoff of his style, certainly. There's a movie called Million Ways to Die, where William Peterson looks at the house and says, this looks like a Gaudi house. Here we are on Rodeo Drive. This is the most famous and the most expensive shopping district in the U.S. Now, I don't really recommend shopping on Rodeo Drive, not unless you've got a trust fund or a couple $1,000,000 in your wallet. And even if you can afford to shop here, I don't recommend it, because the people inside these stores are not very nice. You get a lot of attitude here. So I don't honestly really understand the appeal of shopping in a place where they're not going to be nice to you. And yet, they must be doing something right here. They get about 5 million guests a year on this one street. The thing is, check out the people shopping on Rodeo Drive. How many are actually shopping? I see a lot more cameras than I do designer bags. What do you think? Check out the place on the left, the Bijan store. Notice the Rolls Royce parked in front of the store. That car has its own designer parking meter just for it. The car and the meter and the store all belong to the Bijan family, who have been selling men's suits and ladies' handbags and designer jewelry out of that store for generations. That store, like some of its sisters on Rodeo Drive, charges you to get inside. In the case of Bijan, it's $1,500 fee to get through the door. That's before you buy anything, folks. So you have been warned. Now, not all the stores on Rodeo Drive are like that. Honestly, most of the stores aren't. Most of the stores are designer brand names. These stores are basically here to represent their entire chain. And the chains have units all over the world. But they're here because of the prestige that comes from being here. They're here because they realize that having a store on Rodeo Drive is something they can brag about and boast about in all the other places where they sell their overpriced merchandise. So they're here just because of the cachet that comes from having this address. Hopefully it's worth it for them. So if the doors are open, it's probably a brand name you've heard of before, because they don't really want to have policies on Rodeo Drive that they're not going to implement in their other stores. But they're not really interested in you buying anything from them either. It's all about the big picture for these chains. A lot of these stores are interesting for all kinds of reasons. And only one of the buildings these stores are in is interesting. See the place on the left? It's got it looks like stacked pizza boxes on the roof, that white storefront. Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the greatest of all American architects, was the designer there. There's a little cut-through street on the left that's called Via Rodeo. Even more exclusive, I suppose. There's not even any vehicle traffic allowed there. At the end of Rodeo, ahead of us, is the Beverly Wilshire Hotel with the yellow awnings. It's where Julia Roberts stayed in Pretty Woman. The corporate headquarters for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer is on the right, the big blue building. Notice their logo with the roaring lion on their parking structure. That logo with that lion is considered to be the most recognized corporate symbol on the planet. Apparently everybody in the universe has seen an MGM movie because we all recognize it when that lion opens his mouth, don't we? Probably more famous than any movie star that ever lived, if you think about it. Once again, it just kind of shows how the entertainment industry has kind of wormed its way deep down inside of us, whether we know it's there or want it in there or not. Cannon Drive is where Spago's is at. It's down that way to the right. Probably the most famous restaurant in Beverly Hills. I ate at Spago's once, and the food was fine, and the people were nice. You didn't get the attitude you usually get in Beverly Hills. But at the same time, I was disappointed because I ordered something and they didn't have it. So I ordered something else. They didn't have that. So finally, they brought me my third choice. And I was sitting there eating my third choice, thinking to myself, Steve, would they have done this to you if you were a movie star? I think we all know the answer to that. This weird beige building on the left, just ahead of us, is the Annenberg Performing Arts Center. It used to be that patrons of the arts in Beverly Hills had to drive downtown to enjoy the ballet and the opera because there was no major theater in Beverly Hills. Well, now they've got their own theater. It means they never have to go downtown again, I guess. Ahead of us on the right is the Beverly Hills City Hall. Beautiful complex. It actually covers several blocks, which is funny since Beverly Hills is a tiny city. It's got 34,000 people, and yet they've got a city hall that's probably big enough to house the state capitol or the national capital for some countries. Look at that beautiful long building with the tower. You might recognize that building in the speech of Beverly Hills Cop. There's a scene where they threw Eddie Murphy into a jail cell in there. He looked around and said, "This is nicer than my apartment." That was filmed there.
They don't really need all this real estate because it doesn't take very many people to administer such a small city. But to show off, they claimed all this land and they built that beautiful building. What fills up the rest of this complex? It's things like the library and the courthouse and the fire department and the police station. They're all here. Like I said, it covers a couple blocks. Corporate headquarters for Playboy is on the way. You have to wonder if they get any work done in there. These white columns that are coming up in the trees on the left, those are hiding the fact that there's an alley and garbage on the other side of the wall. In Beverly Hills, they don't want you to know that they have alleys and they have garbage, so they hide it away. Somebody pointed that out to Woody Allen once, how they hide their garbage, and Woody shook his head. He said, I thought they took their garbage and turned it into TV shows. There's a lot of things they hide or prohibit or restrict in Beverly Hills that other cities would never think twice about. Have you noticed there's no billboards or advertisements allowed in Beverly Hills? There's no convenience stores in Beverly Hills, and no fast food supermarkets in Beverly Hills either. They also don't allow telephone poles. They run the telephone poles through the alleys, or they bury them underground where we can't see them. They think it's uncouth to look at the telephone poles. And you know, the funny part is they consider this to be the poor part of town. This is where the undesirables of Beverly Hills are forced to live. The expensive homes are up in the mountains because they can look down and look down their noses at their neighbors, and this is what they look down at. So consequently, they call this neighborhood sometimes the slums of Beverly Hills. You know, how low can their standards be? They still have pewter fire hydrants here. You know, these homes are like, instead of being 60 or 70 or $100 million, they're going to be $15 million or something like that. You can tell that we're navigating through the slums of Beverly Hills. There's an obvious gang member hanging out on the left, right? It looks pretty dangerous. Probably looking for somebody to rob, huh? In the movie Clueless, there was a funny bit where Alicia Silverstone's dad tells her that she's such a snob she wouldn't date anyone that lives south of Sunset. Well, this is the neighborhood ahead of us that she would find it safe to date out of, because that's Sunset Boulevard up here. So I'm not going to have to show you this abject poverty much longer, folks. I apologize. Actually, we're in the process of leaving Beverly Hills. The neighborhood ahead of us is part of West Hollywood. So for the rest of the day, we're going to get to look at telephone poles again. There's a restaurant on the right, Boa Steakhouse, that's in the corner of this big office complex. Ryan Seacrest is the owner. I don't know how involved in the business he is, probably not much, but it is his name on it. Now, West Hollywood is a nice city. It's an affluent enough city. It's just no Beverly Hills, as you can imagine, as you can see. Notice all of a sudden the fire hydrants are no longer platinum. They're just rusted over lead. This, in fact, is the entrance, the mouth to the Sunset Strip ahead of us. Now, the Strip was named the Strip because originally it was a strip of land between Beverly Hills, which is behind us, and Hollywood, which is in front of us. So all the businesses on the Strip, the nightclubs, the bars, the restaurants, the hotels, were placed here to try to get those stars to get out of those cars and spend their money here. It's to this day kind of the premier party area for Stars, and for people who want to party like the Stars and with the Stars, I suppose. The whole thing was originally controlled by the Mafia. Maybe it still is to a certain degree, I don't know. Bugsy Siegel, who later created Las Vegas as we know it today, was one of the gangsters that ran the rackets here on the Sunset Strip in the early days. In fact, in some ways, the Vegas Strip is kind of a sequel, if you think about it, to what Bugsy did here first. Bugsy Siegel eventually came back to Los Angeles for a weekend. He was here to see his girlfriend. He was dating an actress named Virginia Hill, and they were staying at her house in Beverly Hills when he was assassinated. To this day, they still don't know who rubbed out Bugsy Siegel. It was either his own gang who thought he was spending too much money in Nevada, or maybe it was another gang. But if he would have stayed in Vegas, he would have lived longer, I guess. There's a liquor store on the left with a red tile roof. Right over there, it's called Gil Turner's. That's where Academy Award-winning actress Halle Berry crashed her sports car one night. She literally drove right through the wall. No idea what she was thinking. Maybe she thought it was a drive-through liquor store, but she barreled right through in her sports car, totaled her car, destroyed most of the store, and then stumbled away. You or I, they would have came and arrested us and carried us off in chains, but because she was Halle Berry, basically they just asked for her autograph and let her go. Anyone who thinks that stars aren't treated better than the rest of us hasn't spent much time in LA, obviously. Halle Berry, to her credit, did eventually rebuild the place. In fact, it looks better now than it ever did, so they've got Halle Berry to thank for that. The owner probably wishes that she maybe drives through the front wall every 10 or 20 years. Just on the other side of Gil Turner's, still on the left, the Citibank is where Kelly Osbourne was arrested one night for trying to buy drugs from an undercover policeman. That wasn't too smart, was it? Just beyond that, since we're sitting here, on the left is One Oak. It's the nightclub with the electronic billboard. It's only open for private parties. They usually don't open it up to the general public. Chris Brown was having a private party one night, and somebody came to the door and started shooting. And no one quite figured out what went on that night. Suge Knight was shot 5 times in there. Unfortunately, he survived. Police are still trying to figure that one out. A couple doors down, still on the left, is the Rainbow Bar and Grill, which is a legendary kind of an after-hours club. It feels like a nightclub, but it's zoned like a restaurant so they can stay open late. So stars go in there at 3 in the morning to sober up after a night on the Strip. It's been there forever. In the 30s, Clark Gable proposed to Carole Lombard in there. In the 50s, Marilyn Monroe met Joe DiMaggio on a blind date at the Rainbow. One of these places where a man at the walls could talk. Next door is the Roxy with the red awning. A lot of big stars, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Marley got their start in there. And big stars continue to play there. For example, the band U2 performed at the Roxy, a few months ago. That's a band that sells out stadiums. And yet, they were performing in that little club with 100 seats. That's how prestigious these nightclubs in these neighborhoods really are. Another famous nightclub on the left up at the corner is the Whiskey A Go-Go with the black awning. Probably the most legendary of all the rock and roll clubs in the world. In fact, the owners like to say that every rock and roll star since 1964 was performed on that stage. It might even be true, I don't know. Another place where man of the walls could talk, huh? Seems like there's a story about every human being that's been in Los Angeles involving the Whiskey A Go-Go over the last 50 years. One of the weirdest, I think it's apocryphal, is that Charles Manson was once a bouncer there. It turned out the story wasn't true. What he was is Charles Manson was thrown out by the bouncer there. Just making friends with this guy. The Viper Room is on the right, yet another black awning. There's a theme here, isn't there? Johnny Depp was once one of the owners. You know those guys standing next to the awning? That's where River Phoenix died, is right about in that spot, actually. I wonder if they know that, huh? Tower Records is on the left. It's a record store, but it's not a record store. It's a set. It's designed to look like a record store. There's one's there. In Los Angeles, nothing is real. Everything is a set, basically. Tower Records went out of business, but they were a noted record store for generations there. Now we've got a recreation in the original spot. It's kind of fun to check out these little diners, these cafes, these sidewalk bistros on our left and on our right all around us. You check out these places and you'll see, if you look carefully, there's usually interesting people dining there. Now, I don't understand it, but stars like to come and insist on being seated on the street where everybody can take their picture and stare at them, and then they get upset when we take their picture and stare at them. Mel's Drive-In is on the left. Look into the parking lot of this Smithy's Diner that we go by. It has no drive-in. Mel's Drive-In is a lie. There's also no one named Mel that works there, so it really is a lie. But see, when we think about a 50s diner, don't we think about something that looks like Mel's Drive-In? Of course we do, because our idea about what a 50s diner looks like comes from watching movies that were filmed in Hollywood, probably at Mel's Drive-In. So that's what the movies do. They give us our ideas about places we've never been, and lands we never lived in, and eras we never lived through, and people we never met. All of that comes from movies. Most of our ideas about the world actually. Sky Bar is on the roof of this hotel on the right. Way up there is one of the most prominent celebrity spots in Los Angeles. Everybody that's famous is there. It seems like every night. Comedy Store is on the left. Very famous nightclub for stand-up comedians, a lot of whom have signed the walls. Next door, still on the left, is the Andes. That was formerly the old Hollywood Hilton. And they used to call it the Riot, or excuse me, it was the Hollywood Hyatt, so they used to call it the Riot Hyatt. Because of all the shenanigans involving musicians there. You read stories about rock and roll stars trashing hotels, or throwing televisions out windows of hotels, or driving motorcycles through the lobbies of hotels. Probably happened over there. Saddle Ranch on the left. Very famous kind of country western themed restaurant. Episodes of TV shows like Sex and the City and Modern Family were shot in there. Also on the left is Carney's Express, which looks like a train car. It's not. It's a hot dog stand. Like I keep saying, nothing in LA is exactly what it seems, folks. Elvis used to say that was his favorite hot dog in Los Angeles. I'd certainly listen to the king on that one. On the right is Hart Park, which is named after a very famous cowboy star, William S. Hart. His ranch house is still down there, actually. Standard Hotel is on the right. Notice the upside-down sign. That's just to show how cool they are. Maybe they are cool. Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz were among the investors in the place when it opened. I don't know how involved in the business they are, but they did put money into it. The big castle looming over us on the left is the Chateau Marmont. That's where stars have been coming and hanging out and meeting up and hooking up and getting into trouble and even dying for generations. Most famously, John Belushi died of an overdose in there back in 1982. It's one of these places you go inside. It's like a time capsule of the old Hollywood decadence. You step through the doors, and it could be the 30s or the 50s or the 80s when Belushi was freebasing cocaine in there again. There's very few places like that in Hollywood that are left, you know. We're very much of the moment here, so we're not very good about preserving our past, no matter how famous or infamous it might be. To give you an example of that, where the McDonald's is at on the right was once the Garden of Allah. Isn't it sad we tore down a nightclub as exotic sounding as the Garden of Allah to build a McDonald's? Only in Hollywood, huh? Joni Mitchell immortalized the loss of the Garden of Allah. She sang a song where she talked about how they tore down paradise and put up a parking lot. That is literally what she was talking about. Another landmark, Gone with the Wind, on the right, just ahead of us, where the strip mall with the clock tower is, was Schwab's drugstore. For many years, about 80 years, that was a Hollywood landmark. You remember episodes of I Love Lucy where she's chasing stars around the drugstore? That was actually supposed to be Schwab's. There was a restaurant there, and so famous people would go there and hang out. And when people came to Hollywood, they would go to hang out with the famous people, see if they could see anybody interesting. So it's kind of sad that whatever you say. Not particularly, but thanks for asking. I think you forgot it, actually. That's your roommate, isn't it, Danny? Danny, I think it was your roommate, and it was his turn to do the dishes tonight. Maybe it's just your week to have him. There's a landmark that is still here on the left. The Laugh Factory is coming up. Very famous nightclub. A lot of big stars became big stars there. That really does happen on the Sunset Strip. You really can become a star overnight. Notice that the Laugh Factory has a red carpet encircling it. We just painted into the sidewalk, by the way. In Hollywood, even our red carpets aren't real. This big copper building on the right is the Directors Guild of America building. There's 37 technical unions on every California film set. 37. And this is probably the most important of the bunch. That's why it's so hard to get jobs working in the movies, is because you have to belong to a union to work on the set. And in order to work on the set, you have to belong to the union. It's fun to talk to the guys that have these union cards. Maybe not in the DGA, but you know, the set painters or the set lighters or the people that clean the stage floors after everyone goes home. They have the great stories to tell. Because, you know, they often inherit their union cards from their parents or their grandparents or their great-grandparents who did the same job. You know, it's that hard to get into these unions sometimes. So, you know, those guys have great stories about the earliest days of Hollywood. They're the people you want to talk to. Look at this residential street on the left. It's called Orange Grove, but there's no Orange Street back there. They took a bunch of leafy trees back there, so that plays every tree-lined street in every movie you've ever seen. Most famously, that was Haydenville, Illinois, in the Halloween movies. Of course, to convince people that it was October, they had to spray paint some of those leaves orange, because they don't turn color on their own because we don't have seasons here. Our weather's pretty much the same year around. Another horror movie franchise came out of the same neighborhood. Genesee on the right was Elm Street in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I bet you didn't know that Freddy Krueger hung out in the same neighborhood as Michael Myers, but he did. That's what makes Hollywood so unique, is that every street is like that. On every street you've got 100 movie sets. You know, you've got movie sets colliding with each other and on top of each other and circumventing each other and crisscrossing through each other anywhere you look. So there's a ghost of 1,000 movies haunting these streets here. No other place in the world that's really like that. I don't know, it's kind of romantic to look at it that way. And it's kind of fun to try to figure out what shot where when on these streets. The Parisian florist on the right, that's where Joe DiMaggio used to buy flowers when she sent to Marilyn Monroe's grave for 30 years after she died. Guitar Center on the left has something called the Rock Walk under that awning. It's kind of a rock and roll version of Grauman's Chinese Theater with the handprints of over 100 famous musicians enshrined in there. I'm sure when Sid Grauman started the actual Chinese theater on Hollywood Boulevard, he had no idea that all these years later, something like the Rock Walk would be ripping off his idea. He'd probably also be surprised that they're still collecting the autographs and handprints of stars at his own theater. There's still having premieres there almost every night. The grocery store on the left we call the Rock and Roll Ralph's, because supposedly you're more likely to see a rock and roll star buying groceries over there than anywhere else. I said supposedly because, honestly, I bought a lot of groceries there myself. I've yet to see a rock and roll star there ever. Maybe they're shopping at 3 in the morning when I'm asleep, I don't know. Brad Pitt made his debut on this corner. He was hired by a chicken restaurant to be their mascot. So his job was to jump up and down making chicken noises right over there. That's a rough way to start your career, isn't it? That's actually one of the nice things about LA though. You know, you walk the streets and anyone you pass, yes, they could be a star or they could be a star someday. So, you know, pay close attention to the guy that serves you in a restaurant or the person that sells you something in the store or the fellow that waves at you in a chicken suit. In theory, anyway, that person could be the next Brad Pitt. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and that, of course, keeps the dream alive, doesn't it? Hollywood High School is on the left. Probably the most famous high school in the country. It's famous because of all the famous people that went there, and the famous people that sent their children there. It's also famous because of all the movies and TV shows that have used Hollywood High School over the generations. In fact, once again, when you think about a high school, are you thinking about your own high school experiences, or are you thinking about something that you saw in a movie that was filmed over there? Now, we really do kind of take our shared memories in a lot of ways from things that come out of Hollywood. I remember I was at Warner Brothers once, and I was walking around the back lot, and they were making a movie set in India. And so they had this amazing set with jungle vegetation and a rented elephant stomping around in an artificial lake. I remember looking at it saying, that looks exactly like India. That's amazing. And then I had to kind of slap myself and say, Steve, what are you talking about? You've never been to India. Your idea of India comes from movies that were made on this set.